Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Finding Growth Amid COVID-19, how brands tapped Alibaba's 618 Shopping Festival for digital transformation. I will now hand it over to Deborah Weinswig, CEO and co-founder of Coresight Research.
Drew, thank you so much. And everyone, thank you for joining us for today's Coresight conversation to discuss how brands tapped Alibaba's 618 Shopping Festival for digital transformation. My name is Deborah Weinswig, and I'm the CEO and founder of Coresight Research. Coresight sits at the intersection of retail, tech, and China, and we are honored to host this event. We are also very excited to have three very special guests with us today. We have Amanda Baldwin, president of Supergoop, Erick Haskell, president of International at Allbirds, and Tony Shan, head of Americas of Tmall Global and Kaola Alibaba Group. Before I introduce Tony, in terms of logistics, if anyone in the audience would like to ask a question, please use the Q&A function on the bottom of your screen. We will also have the video and recap report available on our website this week. So let's get to Tony. Tony manages Alibaba's cross-border B2C platforms, leading a team of business professionals working with brands and retailers across all consumer categories to sell into the growing Chinese market. Prior to his work in e-com, Tony was the merchandising and marketing lead for the apparel and footwear business at Quidsi, an Amazon subsidiary that operates US e-com sites such as diapers.com and soap.com. He also gained global retail expertise working at luxury fashion brand Coach in global merchandising and planning. I will hand it over to Tony now to share some exciting insights from last week's 618 Shopping Festival. Thanks so much, Tony.
Great. Thank you, Deborah, for the intro and for hosting this webinar. It's great to be here with you all today. We're also very excited to have our brand partners, Supergoop and Allbirds, here today for the panel later on. So I just want to say a quick thank you to Amanda, Eric, for being here as well. So as Deborah mentioned, I oversee Tmall Global and Kaola for the Americas region. Tmall Global and Kaola are the two largest B2C cross-border platforms in China and part of the larger Alibaba Group's digital economy. So Alibaba Group has a vast ecosystem covering multiple industries and sectors. Aside from our core commerce, we also have consumer services that include marketing, logistics, and payment. And in addition to that, we have digital media and entertainment, as well as our innovation initiatives. All of these components are integrated to support our core commerce business. Tmall Global and Kaola are under our retail commerce, focusing on bringing global brands to Chinese consumers via cross-border e-commerce. I will focus mainly on Tmall Global today, as it is the largest B2C cross-border e-commerce platform in China. We offer various business solutions for international brands to venture into the China market. Tmall Global has over 25,000 international brands from 92 countries and regions and covering more than 5,100 product categories. Now let's talk about 618 Mid-Year Shopping Festival. This event that just wrapped up last week was the largest yet in Alibaba's history. Imported products continue to be in high demand, with nearly 25,000 brands that participated and launched more than 400,000 new products. This year, we also offered new tools and resources for brands to engage with consumers, especially in the wake of the pandemic. With this pandemic, travel has been restricted, so we are able to bring high-quality goods globally to the consumers in China. On Tmall Global specifically, we saw a 43% year-over-year growth in gross merchandise value compared to last year's 618 event. The overseas fulfillment program, which ships goods from a brand's home country, also saw a 2x increase in GMV as more brands are utilizing different platform solutions to deliver the goods to consumers in China. 4,000 brands also saw their GMV double year over year. And then lastly, live streaming has contributed in driving sales and consumer engagement with a 123% increase in sessions compared to last year. The GMV by country ranking was the same as Double 11 last year, with US at number 2 in between Japan and Korea, and with Australia and Germany rounding out the top 5. Now looking at some US highlights, GMV for US brands grew 40% year over year, in line with Tmall Global's overall growth for the 618 event. We had 25 US brands achieve over 10 million RMB in GMV, which is roughly 1.4 million USD. And we also have 200 brands that did over 1 million RMB, which is around 140,000 USD. I'd also like to share some of the US brands did from a marketing perspective during this year's 618. The first one is a campaign we did with renowned makeup artist Pat McGrath and her namesake brand Pat McGrath Labs as part of our Tmall Global Walk of Fame marketing campaign. This program features known celebrities and global influencers who also have their own brands. And in past iterations, we worked with Kim Kardashian for KKW Fragrance, Huda Kattan for Huda Beauty, and Miranda Kerr for Cora Organics. This one with Pat McGrath was a feature on the theme of fireworks makeup with a feature on eye makeup. As you can imagine, now with people having to wear protective masks, eye makeup has become an important focus in the makeup regimen. The second brand, Way, a hair care brand founded by hairstylist Jen Atkins with a celebrity following here in the US. The brand partnered with our famous Chinese KOL, Austin Lee, on a live stream session and featured some of their key products. We also wanted to introduce our consumers to new and unique brands. So here, as an example of Tmall Global's eye-opening campaign, we featured Anthea Himalayan Pink Salt, a brand based in Washington State that also has a flagship store on Tmall Global. For this last part, I want to talk about some general trends that we're seeing in China. First, we are seeing positive consumer sentiment in China post the height of COVID-19. I think the success of the 618 is a good indicator of this future recovery and continued growth. Consumers are spending, demand is recovering, and with limited travel in the short term, I do believe that the demand for imported goods should rise even more. Retail is now entertainment in China. It's not just transactions. Consumers are sharing their feedback publicly, providing recommendations to their network. They like to explore and discover. Our mobile apps are also highly personalized on the based on the consumer profile, their browsing and purchasing history, so content can be more customized to further increase engagement. Lastly, we don't see the live streaming trend dying down, and it will remain a key component for marketing and increasing brand awareness, as well as a sales driving channel. On the consumer demographic side, we're seeing a rise in consumption of global brands from all millennials and Gen Z consumers, as 55% of our consumers of overseas products are born post-1990s. These young shoppers are generally more in tune with global cultures. They're excited to try new products from abroad, and they also like to showcase their own individualities through their purchases. Also, 60% of our new active customers are from less developed areas in China. Readily available technology for online shopping and rising income are also making it easier for consumers in China to buy the things that they want. That inclusiveness can be seen especially in the lower tier cities and rural areas where spending for imported products is also becoming a major growth driver. Lastly, I just want to highlight some examples of high growth and emerging product categories that we're seeing that are currently trending in the Chinese market. High-end and technology-driven beauty tools and devices, men's skincare. I think Chinese men are also starting to take care of themselves and looking younger and younger. Maternity products like pregnancy-friendly makeup, prenatal nutrition, and maternity care. Pet products are also on the rise. For those who aren't ready to have children yet, especially the Gen Zs, having pet companions and buying the best products for them are also becoming quite popular in China. Last but not least, health and wellness will remain a strong category as consumers will continue to be health conscious to protect themselves and their families. So that is all from me. So thank you very much. And I will turn it back to Deborah.
Thank you so much, Tony. Now I'm very excited to be moderating a panel with these retail leaders. You've all met Tony. Let me introduce you to our two other guests. We have Erick Haskell, who's the president of international at Allbirds. He joined in 2018 and oversees Allbirds' commercial activities outside of the US, delivering the D2C experience to customers globally. Previously, he served as MD of APAC for Under Armour and managed their Asia operations. Prior to that, he spent 8 years at the Adidas Group, where he had various roles, including MD of India and COO and CFO of Greater China. Eric and I are no strangers to the same stage, and it's a pleasure to welcome him today. Our third guest, Amanda Baldwin, is president of Supergoop, the first protective skincare brand putting SPF at the forefront and changing the way the world thinks about sunscreen through its clean, feel-good formulas. For those of you who've tried, you know what I'm talking about. Under her leadership for the past 3 years, the company is on track to grow more than 7x. Amanda is a veteran of the beauty industry. She was previously at L. Catterton, led omnichannel marketing strategy at Dior Beauty, and had several roles at Clinique. In my conversations with Amanda, I've always found her to be that amazing balance between near and long-term strategy, and she is truly a pioneer in her field. With that, I welcome both Erica and Amanda to join me and Tony for a few questions. So, Eric, I'm going to kick it off to you to start. I'm sure our audience knows Allbirds very well, but can you tell us a little bit about the brand and your brand story?
Sure. Thanks, Deborah. Nice to be with you again, albeit on a virtual stage, not a physical stage this time. Allbirds is a relatively young 4-year-old company based in San Francisco with very deep roots in New Zealand. We're a lifestyle footwear and apparel brand, and we make all of our products from natural materials such as merino wool, eucalyptus tree fiber, and sugarcane. And these natural materials make not only super comfortable, high-performing products, but they're highly sustainable, some of the most sustainable in the industry. As you mentioned, Deborah, we've rapidly built an international business. We're currently distributing our products in about 30 countries, all through this direct-to-consumer model. We launched our China business in April of 2019, so just over a year ago. And we launched not only on Tmall very successfully, but we also run allbirds.cn. And we launched flagship retail stores in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Chengdu. And we've been extremely happy with the reception that our products have had in China in a relatively short time.
Thanks, Eric. And Amanda, many of us know Supergoop, but for those who don't, can you tell us a little bit more about the brand and your brand story?
Of course. Well, you summed it up well in the beginning. Thank you for that. And, we really are one of a kind. And what I'm learning now is actually one of a kind in the world, not just in the United States where our origin is. We actually were founded over 15 years ago by a woman named Holly Thagard, who is currently based in San Antonio, Texas. So we have long roots. We often look to the outside to folks like, direct-to-consumer newbies from our marketing perspective, but actually we have a long history of formulating product, and we really believe that our mission in life is to go where no SPF has gone before, with a very simple point of view that everyone should be wearing sunscreen every single day and preventing skin cancer. So it's a truly a mission-based brand. And you were right in saying that we are about changing the way the world thinks about sunscreen. And when we say the world, we mean it literally, as we'll be here talking about today. And really our whole point of difference is around product development and being able to deliver. We have 40 plus formulas, very unique point of view about clean ingredients, about having different things for different people, of being super inclusive in how we approach a category that truly is the number 1 thing you can do for your skin. And as we talk about kind of what it's like to launch in China, it's really exciting to be able to bring SPF to a world that really was probably, already knew why it was important and still prove how we can do things differently.
Amanda, can you also talk to us about your strategy and kind of plan for 618? Why was it important for Supergoop to participate in the shopping holiday, and how did it go?
Yeah, I mean, it's really exciting. We launched in China in mid-February of this year. So right as COVID was really hitting its peak and on that side of the globe, it was something that was a long-term decision. It was a long time in the making, and we really felt like we still have a purpose, and we still needed to push forward with our plans. So being a part of 618 was something that was really exciting for us because it was our first opportunity to participate in a large shopping festival in terms of our time in the market. First time to sort of see how we would stack up as a newbie in the market. And, we beat our projections. We were super excited. I mean, the brand overall has performed way beyond our wildest imaginations. And I've spent much of the last few months chasing inventory and stock and living, that wonderful problem to have. But yeah, so we really, it was a little bit of a sort of testing ground for us of sort of seeing like what happens in an environment like this, and how do we understand how to, build a business that is successful in a large promotion, but also is built for long-term success. We're really investing very heavily in the market, and really spend, a lot of effort driving marketing to ensure that we would be successful at a time like this. So, to your point earlier, it was about being successful on 618 and what was the right offer for that moment, but also really investing in terms of the visibility of the brand, which has taken off, and making sure that we're preparing ourselves for many years, and sort of our goals, are certainly long-term ones.
Thanks, Amanda. Erick, you're no stranger to shopping holidays, having had a very successful 11/11. Can you talk a little bit about your experience in terms of 618 versus 11/11? Why was it important for you to participate, in 618, and how did it go versus expectations?
Sure. The shopping festivals for Allbirds are a really great opportunity for us to reach out to Chinese consumers. But I will say they require us to be even more creative than normal, because as a full price brand, we've got to be really relevant to consumers. While many brands approach the shopping festivals with discounts and promotions, we do remain full price. So it means that we've got to be really compelling and really creative with our consumers. So we started building momentum even before the festival started. We had a really important product launch. We launched our first performance running shoe, which really built a lot of excitement in the market. We announced a really innovative carbon scoring program. So we had a lot of momentum going into the festival. And then what we had to do was constantly keep consumers interested. So we did some limited edition products. We did some really interesting gifts related to the brand. We did a branded water bottle. We did an innovative shoe bag. So we continually, through the 20-day shopping festival, continued to do things exciting and relevant for consumers. And I think we were rewarded for it. Compared to the same period, because we actually did 618 the previous year, and compared to the same period last year, we had double the sales. 618 itself, the day, was our single biggest day ever on Tmall. And importantly for me, one of the metrics I look at is during the period, 65% of our consumers were new consumers. So the festival gave us an opportunity to really introduce Allbirds to a whole new set of Chinese consumers. So it was very successful.
Erick, was there anything strategically that you learned from 11/11 or changed from 618 last year, which you think led to your success this year?
Yeah, we really were, I would say, adaptive on the store itself. And we were constantly changing imagery, messaging. And so I think we stayed really fresh and relevant throughout the festival. And that was a learning that we got through 11/11 and some of the feedback we got. So really being current and making daily changes. And again, introducing these exciting, relevant things for consumers on a daily basis was one of the big learnings that we had.
Great, thanks. Amanda, since you're also fairly new to the China market with Supergoop, choosing a partner, I mean, there are many partners to choose when you go to China, but it can be very challenging, and there's a lot of work that I know that's involved. Can you talk about how you made the decision to work with Alibaba, and how has its platform enabled you to engage with the consumers in China?
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly from my past history in the beauty industry, coming to China was part of the master plan. The question was how and when. And quite frankly, we accelerated it based on outreach from the North America team with Alibaba saying, gosh, Supergoop is being talked about. Will you partner with us? So, and that was gosh, I feel like it probably started, I've been with the brand for maybe 4 years in a couple months, probably pretty shortly after I joined, we started to have conversations, and I came and I met several times with groups of executives and tried to learn and understand the market. And so we knew early on that there was an interest in the brand, which, for us as a young company, when we go international, we have very few markets that we're doing that in, and we're making big bets, and we want to really be sure that we're going to be successful. So having that inbound of having proof points was really important. The other thing that was, we do have a partner who we work with, who's sort of our marketing and arm over in China who certainly helps us navigate things because we're a young team. We do not have an Erick yet, but I hope to have one someday. So we also had a lot of conversations about what was the right platform for us, and obviously Alibaba is sort of the game in the market in terms of that integrated shopping experience, and something where we really felt like we could, we do a lot of education in our product. As much as the Chinese consumer may understand SPF, we realize that we're still so much to teach and educate on, and that's something that's really a core strength of ours. And last but not least, for us, we are a cruelty-free brand. And so the ability to go cross-border was sort of a make or break decision for us, because that's something that we just have been from the start, and was not something that we were going to forego, even if it was to go after a new consumer and kind of continue on our mission. So I would say those were the three things that really led us down the path, but I have to give credit to all of the outreach that kind of put it on my radar screen. And I would say certainly accelerated it as I saw the investment being made behind indie beauty brands and really wanting to be a part of that wave and finding a partner who would really help us do that.
Erick, Amanda talked about this idea of partnership. What does it really mean to partner with Alibaba? How did you make the decision, and how have you seen it continue to develop and fuel your relationships with your customers?
Sure. One of the things that was important to us when we formed the partnership with Tmall, and Tmall is the only third-party platform we sell on throughout the world. And as a direct-to-consumer brand, that was an important decision for us. And one of the reasons that we took it, and I think one of the reasons we've been so successful, is the platform does allow us to create a direct-to-consumer-like experience. We feel we're able to tell our brand story on the platform. We control the assortment, we control the pricing, we control the offers. And we do product fulfillment, we do customer service. So it really does allow us, like we do in all of our other channels, to deal directly with the consumer. So that was sort of the original decision. And then as the partnership's grown, I think where we really built upon that initial success is working with the Tmall team locally in China to enhance and hopefully close to perfect our performance marketing. So one of the things I didn't mention about 618 that was really successful is probably more so than in previous festivals, we really engaged with the local Tmall team in terms of doing really effective performance marketing throughout the entire festival. And I think that contributed a great deal of success that we had during the festival itself.
Erick, can you give any specific examples on the marketing that you did that you felt led to your success?
Yeah, a lot of successful retargeting. I mean, the really sophisticated targeting algorithms that Tmall has really helps us hit the right consumers. And so, we found that we're working directly with the team, our team in China, with the Tmall team in China, has allowed us to really effectively target consumers that are relevant to Allbirds.
Great. Tony, a quick question for you.
Yeah.
As companies like, Supergoop and Allbirds are thinking about the China market, what are some of the important things for them to consider as it relates to the Chinese market today? And, what's your outlook longer term for retail in China?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think we have seen a greater acceleration of digitization for both consumers and businesses, and how quickly the adoption of digital has grown. The recovery from COVID-19 can be long-term, but we're optimistic about the continued growth and opportunities in the Chinese consumer market. Especially coming out of 618, we still see great demand for imported and international products. As global travel is going to be restrictive in the near future, Chinese consumers aren't able to travel and shop abroad. So we, as the Tmall Global platform, is going to play an important role in continuing to bring high quality products from around the world to these consumers at home. For companies to be successful in the Chinese consumer market, they should keep up with the consumer trends, where they're shopping and how they're shopping. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, live streaming, KOL partnerships, and social commerce will play major roles in driving brand awareness and consumer engagements. These might not be the typical driving forces for brand growth here in the US, so companies need to adapt their strategies and marketing vehicles to cater to the Chinese consumers.
Right, and Tony, as we've seen this growth in demand in third-tier cities, how does that change your relationships with the brands and retailers as they're, trying to figure out, what products to sell where and how to approach that consumer?
Yeah, for sure. I think in the past, our cross-border primary focus has been more on the tier 1, tier 2 cities because these folks there have the means to be able to travel abroad and be able to see the products in these countries that they're traveling to. But now with the more or less developed areas having access to these products and these goods, we are seeing brands also trying to tailor their assortment and their marketing strategies to really speak to these consumers as well. So I think it's continued to be more of a comprehensive view in terms of market and not really just focusing specific areas, but also tailoring to the entire country as well.
Thanks. And Eric, as there's obviously been many challenges this year caused by COVID-19, really globally, what lessons did you learn or tips for success that you can share with other brands and retailers who are on this call?
The key learning that we had is the necessity of having full omni-channel capabilities. It was actually quite accidental, but when we launched in China in April of 2019, it was really important to me to have these full online to offline capabilities. And it was something that we launched with from day one. And it was really because that's what we figured consumers wanted. We figured that being a brand of the future, we should allow consumers to shop the brand however they want and be able to buy online when they're in retail, buy online and have it shipped from store, pick up from store. So we built those capabilities literally from day one. And really an unintended consequence of that is when COVID hit, we were able to continue our business uninterrupted. As you'll all remember, the COVID crisis in China hit right about the time we were starting Chinese New Year. And so it hit at a time when most warehouses were closed. Fortunately, we had just stocked up our retail stores in preparation for a busy Chinese New Year. And what ended up happening when all of the warehouses were closed and really fulfillment largely shut down in China, we were able to continue to fulfill orders from our retail stores. And we had the technology backbone and the capability to do that, and the operational capability to do it. So, although I mentioned it was an unintended benefit of building that, it was really a big lesson to me of how critical those online to offline capabilities are, not only to be a great brand for consumers, but enable to continue operating when you have these unexpected things like a pandemic.
Eric, one of the things that we saw, I would say during the early days of the pandemic in China was just so many brands offering these heartfelt messages. Can you talk about the, how Allbirds, kind of thought about messaging and how they kind of approached that period of time, specifically in the China market?
You know what we did? It's actually an interesting story, and it goes beyond China. We, during the pandemic, had a really blunt discussion internally on our China team about, what can we do to help? We really wanted to help. We realized we're a small new brand in the market. And somebody on the local China team came up with the idea of, why don't we provide shoes to hospital workers in Wuhan? This was at the peak when the crisis was at its worst in Wuhan. And so we did that. We shipped a lot of shoes to frontline workers in Wuhan. Frankly, we didn't do anything publicly about it. We just did it as a way to help, and it made us feel really good to do it. I then shared that story with the global Allbirds leadership team, and it ended up becoming a corporate-wide initiative. And we ended up doing this literally around the world and provided a significant number of shoes to hospital workers around the world. And it was really an initiative that started as a small conversation in China and ended up being a really meaningful, impactful approach to the pandemic globally.
Wow, that's really heartfelt. Thank you. Amanda, obviously it's been a unique year, and with a kind of early start in China for you, how did you kind of talk about these challenges around navigating the pandemic, especially as you were entering this market for the first time? What lessons can you share with others, and how do you think about it going forward as well?
Yeah, obviously we were in sort of a different position because we hadn't launched yet when this first started to unfold. So there were a lot of conversations about if to launch, how to launch, and I think the lesson there, and we had the benefit of being 100% digital in our approach, was, stay focused on the long term. And if you believe in something that you're building for the long term, just keep going, which I think is really important globally around COVID, is that, one does not know what the next week brings. But I think all of us know what we're trying to build over many years. I think Allbirds is an incredible brand. I've always been a huge fan. I think, when you're just building something for the long run, I think the answers become much more clear. So I think we really stayed focused on why were we entering the market in the first place and why that was so important. For us, the mission of what we're trying to accomplish always guides us. So I think it wasn't a tough decision. We talked about it, but it was sort of obvious that we needed to go forward. And I think, the upside of the experience of launching at this time was because people were inside and maybe didn't have their full calendars of activities. A lot of people were watching beauty live streams. And so we had unbelievable success out of the gate. So I also believe life has a funny way of working itself out. So I think that was definitely a lesson learned, but, continuing to be adaptable. I think there are impacts on the market globally. We are prepared to change our strategy on almost a weekly basis, reforecast. So kind of staying focused on the long term, but super flexible about what you're doing day to day, I think is really important. And to echo a little bit about what Eric was saying, I think, this is a moment that is about doing the right thing, doing something because you feel good about it, and really protecting your people. And we have, like I said, a partner in China, but I was really impressed by how they handled everything. And I, quite frankly, have learned a lot in talking with them when it was in early stages of the epidemic hitting here in the United States, being able to sort of lean on them and saying, how are you handling your team? What are you doing? So I think that, I think every leader today is thinking first about their team. And if you get that right and you ensure that they're physically safe, mentally safe, I think the business comes from that. So I think that's my other big lesson is it always can be said many more times, but it's, people first, always. And I think at a time like this, it's more important than ever.
Amanda, with your recent launch, having a kind of strategy and a timeline to enter the market, and obviously trying to be up and running for such an important shopping holiday, can you share with us how you thought about the timeline, how you executed against it, and what were the greatest challenges in terms of, kind of being on time to operate in China?
Yeah, I mean, the SPF category, has a certain cadence to it. And I think when I was, sort of first setting up our plans to launch this year, we had a sense of what we needed to be prepared for when, in order to catch, I kind of learned a lot about search trends around our category and when people start making these kind of decisions. And so we were pretty aware of like what we needed to do in terms of that if there was a window that if we missed it, in terms of launching, we were kind of going to miss a lot of the research that consumers do as they make a choice in this category. And I think we always knew that 6/18 was going to be important because it fell right in the middle of a prime season for us and a prime decision-making point. So I think right from the beginning, we kind of knew what the beginning point was and what the end point was. And so I think we kind of knew what we were building towards. And I think, we've learned a lot so far. We still have half the year to go. I think, we'll learn a lot. And we also spend a lot of time, I think, I was just on the phone this morning talking about like, okay, what are we learning now and how is that going to impact what we're going to do going forward as we continue to build the business?
That's a really important point. Eric, when, Amanda talks about this idea of research and learning and being incredibly agile, since you have more experience in the market, I don't know if you can share a little bit about what you've learned, how you've adapted, and how that's driven your success.
Yeah, in fact, about 6 months after we launched in China, we did a pretty robust consumer research project. And we wanted to learn more about what consumers were thinking about Allbirds and how we were coming to market. And we really learned a lot in terms of the way we communicate the brand messaging in China. And a couple of the learnings we had, for example, is we realized that consumers weren't fully appreciating the premium nature of Allbirds products because we weren't adequately explaining the premium nature, for example, of the merino wool that is in our products, which is milled in Italian fabric mills, the same ones where Armani suits are made. We also underappreciated the extent to which Chinese consumers found these natural materials to be really innovative. So it actually caused us to tweak our messaging and really focus on the premium nature of the product and the innovation involved in making products out of natural materials. And we saw a really strong response from consumers. So, you know, China's such a dynamic market, and for as many years as I've been working there, it's always critical to do these touch bases and speak directly to consumers, especially as a new brand, understand how they're perceiving the brand and how you may need to alter your messaging for that particular consumer. So that was an important step that we took literally 6 months after we launched, and did cause us to make some changes, which had a really positive impact.
Great, thanks. Tony, we talked a little bit about this idea, the timeline with Amanda. How do you think, right, if somebody wants to hit, you know, kind of the next shopping holiday, how do they start to work with Alibaba? You know, what does that kind of look like? What are the stages? And you know, for those brands on the phone who, you know, it's their first time really thinking about China, can you help us think through that?
Sure, of course. Well, we hope that today's webinar is a good start to help demystify the China market a little bit. And you've heard from Supergoop and Allbirds with their different approaches to the market as well. We do understand that there are brands of all sizes with various strategies and objectives, and also at different stages in their exploration into the China market. We don't have a prescribed path for all brands. So we're here to work with brands to tailor their right approach for them. We do have a global team of business development professionals in Asia, Europe, Australia, and here in North America as well, who can help in evaluating a brand's readiness and also the approach for market entry, and also talk about the timeline as well. My team of category experts are located in New York, Los Angeles, and Vancouver, and we'll be happy to connect with brands and retailers who would like to connect and explore next steps together. We also have a multi-language website that contains helpful information on our various business solutions, our onboarding process, operations on the Tmall global platform, and more brand case studies as well. The website is merchant.tmall.hk. It also has a portal where you can fill in basic brand information for a consultation with one of our team members. So that request will be routed to one of our local business development team members based on your product category, who will reach out to you for more detailed conversation and talk about your general strategy for entering the Chinese market.
Tony, a few of the things that were talked about today, right? This idea of partnership, you know, research, understanding the consumer. One of the, I would say, things I've always been incredibly impressed with is, as you know, we've worked with brands entering China, how much, you know, or how many insights are provided to us and to the brands in terms of the white space in the market, so that you know, they have a much greater chance of success when entering. Can you talk a little bit about that process and how you work with brands around that?
Yeah, so we have a robust data in terms of sales performance, emerging categories, emerging brands, as well within our whole Alibaba ecosystem. So that's what I think some of the work that we can do here as our business development team, to provide kind of a macro overview for brands in terms of what's performing well in the market, how they should think about their pricing strategy and also their promotional strategy, and really kind of work with the brand to figure out the best approach for them based on the information that we have at our disposal, to provide some additional guidance for these brands to make their decisions.
Great, thanks, Tony. So we're going to turn it over to audience Q&A. If anyone has a question, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to get to your questions. So Tony, the first question is for you. Can you talk a bit more about third-tier cities, and how can retailers and brands better understand that consumer?
Oh, yeah, so I think earlier I mentioned, we're definitely seeing more customers coming from third and fourth tier cities in terms of shopping online for global and international brands. I think traditionally for a lot of international brands, when they're thinking about going to China and also having an offline presence, their primary focus has been the first tier and second tier cities, where they would have a retail space and be able to have retail shops to sell their products. But for these third tier and fourth tier cities consumers, they don't have access to those retail shops. So they are going online, going onto the Tmall global platform to look for things. And also there's a lot of social commerce that I mentioned earlier in terms of consumers sharing feedback in terms of what they bought and what they like about certain brands. So that also kind of influenced these lower tier cities consumers to purchase what they otherwise might not have a lot of information on. So I think when brands are thinking about targeting these consumers as well, in addition to the tier 1, tier 2 city consumers, is really, like I said earlier, utilizing all of the resources that's available and having the data from tier 1, tier 2 cities to really drive some product and merchandising decisions to appeal to the lower tier city consumers as well.
Great, thanks. Erick, I think you're going to do some mentorship at the moment. What is the, kind of, if you're a US brand, how do you best position yourself in China, and how should small companies position their goods for the market?
And one of the decisions we made, and I know this isn't possible for all companies to do, but we really committed to the China market when we went in. We built a local team. We built really strong local capabilities. So I do think that's important. When I compare us to other brands who are simply putting product in the market, I found that we've had real traction because we have built that local team with local expertise who works directly with the Tmall team in China. And I think it's just allowed us to get a lot of traction. It's allowed us to be a lot more relevant with Chinese consumers. We've got experts in Chinese social media, digital marketing, PR. So I think that's really been one of the key parts of our success. Again, I acknowledge it's not always possible for all companies to do, but I think in our case, making that commitment early on to build that local team and build the local expertise has been really important.
Amanda, I'm going to take this audience question, but I think this follows quite nicely into what Erick just talked about. For those small companies who don't have a local team, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, find a great partner. I think it probably is unique to everybody's industry. And Tmall very early on offered us up some introductions. So I think that's probably a great place to start, because obviously you want a partner who has a great relationship with who's going to be your great partner on the other side. So I think that would probably be my advice, is probably start with, sounds like there's this great way to sort of apply and get some more information. I'd get the conversation going that way and ensure that there's demand in the market for your product. And then maybe approach it from that angle, and getting, sort of an approved partner, I think is probably what I would suggest. And I think that they have, I think that, and that's like choosing anyone else who's going to sort of join your team, anyone that we don't have any, we always go direct to market except for in China. So this was a unique situation for us. And I think just, it's about trust and people understanding your brand when you are not in the position where you've built everybody internally, but you should treat it as if you were hiring somebody internally.
Thank you. The next question is an interesting one. What are your post-COVID strategies and impact on profitability? And I think that we should, look at maybe post crisis and then post-COVID, because we're obviously not technically post-COVID yet. So maybe if, Amanda, you can start with that. So kind of what are your strategies now that you may not have otherwise had in place? And then how do you think about everything kind of post-COVID?
I mean, like I said, I think, we don't have a retail presence. So pre and post is, probably it's more from the perspective of consumer psychology. I mean, I think we definitely are being very mindful of how consumer shopping behaviors are. I saw this sort of on Tony's slide about health and wellness, and really making sure that we're positioning our storytelling appropriately for the moment is something that we're thinking about globally. So the long-term mission and vision of the brand hasn't changed, but how you communicate every single week, you need to be sort of aware of where the consumer's head is. And so I think that that's really important. And I think that that's true always, but I think the pace at which things may change, I think is really quite rapid. And so I think being on top of that is really important. I think as one comes out of all of this, I don't know that I'm quite there yet. I'm certainly thinking about, I think if you are a brand that wasn't digital first, that is certainly accelerated, I think, across the globe. So I think making sure that one is shoring up your digital capabilities is probably an important but very obvious one. And I think also I really believe in, and it's not just how do you sell the product, but it's also thinking about the backbone of your operations and making sure that you have the supply chain. And obviously that was some of the first places that we experienced COVID is understanding how that was going to impact our supply chain. We certainly had some very nail biting moments that have sort of impacted how we think about making sure how much safety stock, all these things. So I think it really has to be across your entire organization, not just the consumer place, but I always start there.
Right, and Eric, that leads into the next question, which is how are you managing your logistics in the current environment?
We've got a great 3PL partner that works with us not only in China, but throughout Asia. And so we were very fortunate. I mentioned before that we were able to use a fairly nimble supply chain along with our retail stores to continue to service orders throughout the crisis. We've also struggled a little bit with some of the inventory issues that Amanda just mentioned, but by and large, we've been very fortunate that we've maintained continuous service throughout the crisis. And what we've really focused on, going a little bit beyond logistics, and just to follow up on the previous question, I mentioned earlier that a big learning for us was having these online to offline capabilities. Again, it was an unexpected benefit we got from having those capabilities. But we've continued to explore ways that we can allow consumers to interact with the brand any way they want. That was a big learning that came out of this. So we've been, like many other brands, experimenting successfully with live streaming with the help of Tmall in many cases. We've also done what I think are some innovative things in that when we have consumers call in, or in most cases, chat in with our customer service team in Shanghai, we're experimenting with Tmall with some of their technology, actually connecting those consumers via video chat to our retail store staff if they have questions about styling and what they should buy. So this whole period has caused us to really think hard and experiment in ways that we can allow consumers to experience the brand in any way that they feel comfortable. And I think this is going to be important for all brands as we go forward.
Thanks, Eric. And Amanda, actually along those lines, we had an audience question about the importance of customer service in China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have a full customer service team. So, what I've learned about it as somebody who is obviously more familiar with the North American market is the level of detail of the questions around beauty is extraordinary. So, we've always believed that we really have a lot of confidence in our product and every single ingredient that goes into them. But what we get asked on Instagram and DMs versus what we get asked through our customer care in China is like totally at a different level, and I love it. But the level of precision and sort of buttoned upness that I think is required to demonstrate the credibility of your product, the seriousness of it. We are playing in a category in which, like, if it doesn't work, it's not okay. So I think that's been the sort of wonderful surprise that's come out of this, is like you really have to have your A game on when it comes to customer questions, because people are super knowledgeable and ask down to every last detail.
Eric, along those lines, how has the customer really kind of pushed you to be your best selves? And how is that, kind of been communicated?
Yeah, first of all, I agree with everything that Amanda just said, and customer service is a critical part of our operation as well. We've got a team that sits in our Shanghai office with the rest of the team and are able to ask these very detailed questions, which we get similar to Amanda. One of the other things that is important to us, and this is globally with Allbirds, but it's very relevant to China, is we really do listen. We listen carefully, and the feedback that we get from consumers ends up really informing things like product development and what we ultimately create for consumers. So when we launched in China, we actually got some very specific feedback that we hadn't had in other parts of the world, really good feedback. And we have I would say a really strong feedback loop where we're able to get that information directly to our product development teams. And we've actually made changes to some of the products based on that great feedback we've had from Chinese consumers.
Great, thank you. Tony, an interesting question for you. How relevant are African brands to the Chinese consumer market?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So I don't know if many people are familiar. We also have a EWTP program that's offered by Alibaba, which is Electronic World Trade Platform. It's our Alibaba-led initiative that aims to lower barriers for global trade for small and medium-sized enterprises through e-commerce. So Rwanda is our first EWTP country, and we recently just signed Ethiopia as well from Africa. And most recently, we actually did a live stream with one of our very popular KOL in China, Weiya, to sell Rwandan coffee. I don't remember the exact amount that was sold, but I think it was within seconds, like a ton of coffee was sold. So I think in terms of there's a lot of good businesses from Africa. Again, it's really thinking about what are the products you're selling and how you're appealing to the Chinese consumer.
Great. An interesting question for you, Tony, also is Tmall Global announced last year the launch of Global Walk of Fame. Mm-hmm. How could brands leverage from this program?
Yeah, so for Tmall Global, we do also have a marketing team that's thinking creatively of ways of engaging with our consumers on our platform, and also helping brands as well to connect with these consumers. So the Global Walk of Fame specifically, as I mentioned earlier, is really targeting celebrity and global influencer-led brands to connect them to the consumers directly through this program. But we also have other marketing IP campaigns to help brands of all sizes really to engage with our consumers. We have a national treasure program where we focus on specific countries and discovering new products and new brands in that environment. And our beauty team is also doing a campaign around the indie brands like Supergoop to really kind of talk about the story and these brands' DNA and what they're known for to the consumers.
Thanks. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up, but I'd like to ask Eric and Amanda one last question. Eric, can you just share, what lessons have you learned? What advice do you have? And, any last thoughts?
I mean, I think really, and again, this is a global and a China response, and I've hit on it in several of my other responses, really focusing on the consumer and what the consumer wants, and particularly in China, and Amanda was exactly right. The Chinese consumers are extremely smart and very demanding, and I think especially, I've been in footwear and apparel for a long time, which can be a extremely competitive and sometimes cluttered market. So especially as a small brand to break through, you really do need to focus on the consumer and focus on what they want and meeting, in the case of China, these very demanding needs that they have. That's been a learning that I've had repeatedly in the years that I've been working in China, and particularly this experience with Allbirds, it's really proved that to be so, so important.
Great. Amanda, from your side?
Yeah, I mean, I think, my biggest piece of advice to anybody listening who's in my earlier stage shoes is play the long game. I think sometimes it's tempting to see, how much will somebody order tomorrow, especially in a economic climate where, I know that some brands are challenged, and I think that this is too big of and too important of a market. I've certainly heard a lot of things about people saying, oh, I can use my excess stock, or I can just do this quickly. And my biggest piece of advice is, this is too important for that. And, play the long game now and always.
Tony, last question. What advice would you give to retailers and brands today who are just considering China for the first time? What do they need to think about, and what's most important on the list?
Of course, actually, there's many different important things that they should think about. But I think one thing that we just want to make it a little bit clear is the China market is quite different than the U.S. market. So you really have to think about this market strategy very differently than how you would approach it here in the U.S. You can't just take the same strategy and assume that it would work in China, because like Eric and Amanda said, the Chinese consumers are very demanding and they're very different and they want different things. So I think from a brand's perspective, definitely look into the market and tailor a specific strategy for China. And then one other thing I want to mention is just to make sure whether you're deciding to go to China today or down in the near future, please register your trademark today because in China it is first to register. So that is one of the most important things for you as a brand and a retailer to protect your IP as well.
Very good advice.
Tony, you always have great advice. What an incredible discussion. As the global retail industry is looking for answers, I think we collectively covered many of those today. And as we think about the future, we really want to thank so much our special guests, Tony, Eric, and Amanda, and especially to you, our amazing audience. Coresight has experienced significant interest in retailers and brands setting up their cross-border sales with China, and the Alibaba team has always provided our companies with incredible support. If anyone has any questions about getting up and running on Tmall, please reach out to Tony Shan. His email is on the screen. And if there are any media questions, please direct those to Candace Huang. And make sure to visit Alizilla for amazing up-to-date news. We look forward to seeing all of you on our next Coresight conversation on Wednesday, where we'll have Brad Santana, the head of e-commerce from Hershey's, joining us as we discuss Open for Business. As a reminder, this and all previous webinars are available on our website. Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us.